This is the Make Planning Make Sense podcast. I'm Aaron Zimmerman. I'm a director at Central Planning Consultancy, and I'm your host. We take a tailored planning approach on complex applications, appeals, and strategy to turn potential into results for developers, landowners, and architects nationwide. Our guest for this episode is Darren Rodwell, a man who needs no introduction, who you'll recognize as the former leader of the London Borough of Barking and Dagenham Council. Darren has a new book called Building Communities One Brick and One Heart at a Time, which is out now. I was most interested to talk to Darren about creating momentum in a planning system that is structurally indifferent to its outcome, and how Darren was able to change the future for Londoners in his borough by building community support and forward momentum for the ambitious regeneration of Barking. The conversation again begs the question of whether we should have a planning system that is otherwise content to be as inert as dry clay. But more to the point, in the system that we do have, Darren shows how leadership, vision, and an incredible amount of effort can still get good things done. We'll be back in September after the summer holidays with our analysis of the draft London plan and the changes it will need if it is going to succeed in its most urgent priority, delivering a sufficient number of homes for Londoners. If you like today's episode, share it with your fellow planimals, and please do follow the show. And remember, we're ultimately here for you. Whenever you have a complex project that needs excellent planners on the team, please get in touch. Find me on LinkedIn and stay in touch on Instagram at MPMS Podcast. Here's my conversation with Darren Rodwell. Darren Rodwell, thanks for joining us today.
Lovely to be here, Aaron.
We always like to start off with who you are and your role, but for a man who needs no introduction, let's do it anyway.
Well, I'd be very surprised. I was once the leader of Barking and Dagenham Council, as well as being the chair of the housing group for London councils and the lead for housing, and the deputy chair of London councils. LGA, I had a role there where I chaired and deputy chaired around housing and planning, and I was local government spokesman in the subject as well. So quite a lot to do with housing, communities, and how we can shape a brighter future for everyone.
And your current role?
My current role is I have a little consultancy called Inclusive Growth Consultancy, and that is, again, working with public and private sector entities in giving them strategic advice on how to really engage community, how to get what you want from planning, really, because planning is an incredible tool that can make so much difference to someone's life, making sure that both the public and private sector understand what it means to those communities is really important. And that's what the book's about, really.
That is Building Communities One Brick and One Heart at a Time, which I have read, not in, I admit, as much detail as I wish I had time for, but really a really excellent read. And some of the discussion today is going to be grounded in the book, which is also your experience, which is also what you've carried forward into consulting practice.
Absolutely. So the book really does give a flavour of what you should be thinking about when it comes to communities and why communities are so important when it comes to the planning process. I tried to make it as easy a read, so if you need to skim it like you did, Aaron, that's absolutely fine. Or if you want to go a bit more detailed, you can take notes as well. But the idea of the book, though, was to make it readable for people in different aspects of their life. So whether it'll be a resident or a local person thinking about planning, or the community that they want to see, through to the professionals in both the public and private sector.
And that's exactly why my mom doesn't listen to this podcast, although she's very proud of it, because she said, I don't even know what you're talking about.
But that's the point, isn't
Exactly.
it? Actually, it's a bit like politics. People used to say to me, oh, I don't get politics. I'm not into politics. And I said, well, everyone does politics. I said, whether it's the school playground, whether it's in work, it's about how you interact with one another to get the best you can for the situation you find yourself in. No different in planning or housing.
That's so well said. And also, of course, this conversation is going to be couched in what I described to Councillor Anthony Okereke.
Oh, yes. My good friend Greenwich, yeah.
Yeah. Who was on the pod. He said, we were talking about this. And I was like, sorry, you're speaking with just absolute technocratic nerds here.
Brilliant. I look forward to it. Go on then, start with the questions.
I wonder if it's helpful to start with Barking Dagenham.
Yep.
And maybe a chronological approach
Okay.
might be a good way to go about it, because it is a story of transformation in a lot of ways. And when I said that you might need no introduction, it really is somewhere between a case study and a fairy tale, I think, held up as an example, to say the least.
Fairy tale. I've never heard it called a fairy tale before. But what I would say to you is it's an example of if you empower, people will be the best architects of that community. So everyone is an architect of their community. So I was no different. And if we go back, then I was a community leader for a decade. I ran a tenant residents association. The BNP then turned up in my community. In fact, the local leader of the BNP lived in he was the representation of the council there, him and another colleague of his, whilst there was one Labour. And people forget that the BNP back in 2006, if they'd have put up 51 candidates, they would have taken the council.
Wow.
No one else in the country would say that, or could they have had that sort of reach? But they did in Barking and Dagenham, and that really interested me because as a local community leader, I wanted to understand why people felt that they were the answer to some serious questions. Now, deindustrialisation had really hit the borough. It was the new Labour government, the last one, but people didn't feel that connection. They didn't feel again, I talk in the book, the 3 Ps, people with purpose in place.
Yeah.
And it's much easier for the rhetoric of hate to come through and to be listened to people that are feeling despondent with the situation. And that's very much what was happening in Barking and Dagenham at that time. And I didn't blame people for voting the way they voted. I wanted to understand why they felt the need to vote that way. In my own little ward, as a TRA chair, I went round and I knocked and I spoke to 1,000 people at that time. And I was quite taken back because people of all different backgrounds, ethnicities, voted BNP. And it was about belonging. It was about connection. It was about civic pride. It was about feeling valued within the system of society. And that was clear. That's what had dissipated over 30, 40 years. And I'd seen great industries disappear in Barking and Dagenham, Ford being the last in 2002 disappearing. So that was the sort of the start, if you like, of me thinking about how do we put a framework together to rebuild a community. And then I then got elected in 2010. I needed to understand the institution of local government as well. I'd never worked in it. I'd never been part of it. I'd been a participant through the tenant residents, but it's very different to be on the outside and the inside. To understand how an organisation thinks and operates. And it's very clear to me that, like most of local government, it acts like a parent to its community rather than a partner or a facilitator. And again, the big interesting journey, and it's in the book, is how we moved the authority into being that partner organisation to the community rather than the parent organisation, and allowing that community to be the leadership it needed to be for the local authority to facilitate that leadership and then to find investors to invest in that leadership. Whether it be the building blocks like Be First and Reside and BD Energy, or the community networks that we built with the Citizens Alliance Network, whether it be the Social Progress Index to know exactly where people were at in their life situations. It was all of that work that needed to happen first so that we could then get the institution to work and come up with answers that facilitated the ambition of change.
It's really interesting that you started the chronology not with the Gascoigne estate was falling down and it was dangerous. You started with the BNP and a political sentiment. And of course, there are parallels with that today. And it reminds me of what Dr. Nancy Holman was saying on the podcast back in season 1. Folks can check it out, which is that if we fail to provide for the people's needs in the roles that we're responsible for as a government, a local government, a sector, that we do so at our own peril.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Remember, when you're in public office, you are a servant to that community. So whilst I had the title of leader, actually, I was the biggest facilitator of their ambition since the borough had been created, I suppose. And I was always aware of that.
Working with, not for, right? It's the partnership, not the parental kind of relationship.
Absolutely.
Which also piques my interest because we see a lot of discussion just within the built environment sector that there's either a parental dynamic or a plainly antagonistic dynamic.
Yes. Yeah.
And it reminds me of what Laurie Hancock, I'm not going to do name drops the whole episode.
No, you keep going. You've been meeting with lots of famous people and then you got me.
What am I like? No. And then you've got me. Laurie Hancock at ICNE said that the system works beautifully when there's a shared interest in the outcome. Now, he was talking about within the sector, but it's evident that also relates to the relationship between the sector and the public, local government and the public.
Again, I said earlier, everyone in the community is an architect of their community. Yeah. They might not have the qualification, but actually they are what makes it a community. So how do you get their voice valued and heard in a way that makes them feel part of that community, allowing change to happen? Now, when I looked at Be First and what we wanted it to do as an entity, as a building block, we wanted the expertise of the private sector, but with the values of the public sector. So it had to bring a financial return, but also a social return. And we set it up as a development investment planning company. What did that mean in principle? Well, it meant that the members who would be on planning committee knew that anything that came through the Be First portal was policy compliant, because it had to be, because we had set the policy. So what did that do? Well, that meant then you had certainty for the investor.
Yes, de-risking the process.
In de-risking the process, absolutely. And people say again, did it work? Well, we were 338 out 341 planning authorities on giving permissions.
Yeah.
We were not a good place. Within 4 years, I think it was, we were to the top 3. And within the 4th or 5th year, we were number 1. And as I understand it today, it's still number 1. It hasn't been knocked off its perch. So I'd say it worked pretty well. So what we did was we streamlined the process. I saw what we needed to do to give certainty, build trust, which is really important, and listen to the aspiration of what was wanted by that community. So I can tell you, we had the largest film studios built in 25 years in Dagenham, Digital Dagenham and London's Hollywood. And it was called Digital Dagenham as well because we had at the time the largest data centre. And then next door to that, we had it was a unique life science facility, globally used and renowned. So in that area of about 77 acres, we had put in around £2 billion worth of investment. So international investment had come in. Not a single objection, not one. Why? Because it was listening to the aspiration of the community, what they wanted to see. We had children doing TikToks in their bedrooms. So of course they can go and make film because they're creatives. Yeah. We also had a very diverse community that was doing this, which is really important for the creative sector. 92% are white and middle class. I've got no problem where you come from. But actually, if we want things to thrive, you need as much inclusion as possible. So you weren't just thinking about bricks and mortar, you were thinking about hearts and minds. How do you get the community to be the champion of that change, the ambassador rather than the blocker?
The digital studio example fits really nicely with my understanding that, of course, planning is a benefit. I'm in this job by choice. I do reflect on whether my job is suiting me, and it's a question I pose. It's not something I'm not sleepwalking through my career. And I've always felt that planning is about quality of life, and the digital studio example emphasizes a really important part of that, which is access to opportunity.
Absolutely. Because
as you say, you have the talent, you have a natural fluency in digital communication as people grow up in the digital age.
Look at the AI generation that's going to happen now. For someone who's dyslexic like myself, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Because my brain is creative. The issue I've always had is how do I put that creative thinking into a framework that the system understands?
That is said. So I have ADHD.
Okay. Yeah.
Totally get it.
Yeah.
Like I know exactly what this vision is.
Yeah.
I really, really like that. I think that's brilliant. It's like the final mile delivery of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. The most important department in any local authority is its comms department. And it needs to do both. It needs to be able to listen and to articulate where it's trying to help the community move to.
Yeah.
The master vision has to come from that community. It has to be the cold data of need, which is, these are the problems. It's black and white. We can't change that. But actually, with all that need, there's always aspiration. I've never met a person who's not aspirational. Yeah. So it's how do you make sure that you layer it in the right way so people feel that aspiration of change works for them in a collective, not as an individual.
That's something that I think the sector gets wrong a lot.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Community engagement is definitely not supposed to be, well, we have this plan-led system, but actually we'll just do whatever your knee-jerk reaction is. And I think sometimes it feels that way.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't beat yourself up too much, though, because actually you're
it's not me.
Okay, fine. Okay, beat up the sector. I would say that the sector's on a back foot because there isn't the master vision that helps the sector to understand that community. And that's because councils are not set up to do this work. They're set up to be the parent still, not the provider of change, the partner. So again, that's what we did very differently. So when an investor was coming to Barking and Dagenham, there was this master vision. So it could have been Barcelona-on-Thames, it could have been Road in Riviera, it could have been Digital Dagenham. But Barcelona-on-Thames, Barcelona was an industrial town that then transformed itself into something new. And that was like, well, hold on a minute, we've got the largest south-facing piece of land in London on the Thames, and it's industrial. Oh, Barcelona-on-Thames. So it was just thinking outside the box. So it showed the aspiration to the community, showed them we were listening, showed them, like, if you take mini Manhattan, Barking Town Centre, it was saying to them, look, we've got to go tall. You've got 4 train lines, 7 bus routes. It's going to be tall. Yeah. Not the Shard tall, but taller than what they'd been used to. Yeah. Yeah, because normally you had some tower blocks on the Gascoigne, which weren't the best. And then you had 3 stories, and again, not the best from the 60s. So it was about saying, well, actually, we want to do this differently, and you're going to be part of that difference. Yeah. And we're going to build for you. So the strapline on the billboard was, it doesn't matter whether you're a builder, a teacher, or a retail worker, these homes are being built for people like you. Yeah. And I remember our first couple was a chap in a Iron Maiden t-shirt and his pregnant wife. That was the first couple, rather than the pretty people, rather than the CGI of a perfect world. Yeah? I wanted people to understand that what we was doing was improving their opportunity to choice. Yeah. Because there's no difference between a child being a drug dealer or a logistics manager. The only difference is the choice they've been given. So again, everyone plans. Yeah, everyone plans. So planning is not an industry unique to the built environment, because we plan for what we're going to do today, tomorrow, next week, next month. We plan to see what we can do to support our children, our community. We're forever planning. And again, with that planning comes politics. Yeah. So it's about, how do you bring all that together? Yeah. And that's very much linking into, if you take, so what makes us all the same? What connects us all together? Regardless of religion, ethnicity, wealth, actually having a home that's warm and safe and truly affordable to what you can afford is paramount. Yes. Secondary to that is what tenure it is. There's only 2 types of tenure in this country. There's rental and there's ownership. Okay. There's a lot of subsidy, but actually let's keep it simple. Yeah. And then from there, you want to live in a community that shares your values, shares your thinking, shares your wish to go forward as a person and part of that community. Linked to that, though, is what you have for your children, which is the aspiration. We all want to help our children. We all want them to have a better life than we did. In my case, grandchildren now. So that is the first triangle. Yeah. The home, the society you want to live in, and the aspiration for the future. Yeah. Really simple. Power of 3, strongest shape in nature. If you take it from the local authority's point of view, and how it links in, is then you're talking about the job of a local authority is to see the aspiration of that community, facilitate that aspiration, and find the people that will invest in that aspiration, no matter if it's public, private, voluntary, whatever it will be. Yeah. That's their role. And then if you take about the money, you always need money. And, there's a big issue about, developers making a profit. Well, of course they've got to make a profit, or otherwise the largest sector in the country wouldn't be able to operate. The built environment sector's twice the size as the financial sector. It's 4 times the size of the cultural sector. It's 1 in 8 jobs, 3.8 million people. It's 24% of the GVA of the country. Yeah. So we need it to work.
And I loved this in the report by NLA.
That's it. I helped young Nick. So me and Nick go back a long way. And Opportunity London, I set that up with Nick. But again, me and him were talking about this, about how we can make change happen and our communities can work through and understand what the opportunities are. It's also the most inclusive sector.
Tell me more.
Well, because it doesn't matter what background you're from. It doesn't matter what qualifications you have. You can be part of the built environment sector. So if you're good with your hands, you can be a carpenter, a bricklayer, you can be a scaffolder, with the whole idea of degrees and apprenticeships.
Yes.
Actually, you can go all the way through to being the architect, the planning officer, the town clerk, whatever the roles are.
Yeah.
So when you look at it as a sector, actually we can facilitate a very wide part of our community. What we've got to do, though, is get them seeing that it's something that's worth valuing. And I believe over the last 30 or 40 years, again, the political rhetoric has been, you only succeed if you get a degree, if you buy your own home and you've got a nice car. Actually, the most important jobs have none of those. If you're someone who sweeps the streets, give it 2 weeks, you certainly know if your street hasn't been swept. If you're someone looking after people because they have illness, need additional needs, so a carer, actually, that's a really important job, because if we didn't have the carers, we wouldn't have the ability to do the jobs we want to do if we don't have that network. So I've always believed that everyone has a value, and what we have to do is give them the ability to show their value.
Yeah. Planning definitely has instances in policy or in the interpretation of policy where there is a presumption of a probably ethnically British, middle class, heterosexual nuclear family. And that's always been interesting to me, because even in the 1950s, when that was promoted aggressively as you say, the preferred option, the mark of success, it wasn't true then any more than it was true now. It's just that now we're like actually able to think about other people in what constitutes the billboard.
Well, but that's the problem.
Yes.
So it's about saying, well, okay, you can be put in a box, or actually you can be unique. And what we need to do is get you to be empowered enough to feel that your uniqueness can then link to other people's uniqueness, that then makes a collective.
Yeah.
And we see that all the time in society. When I was growing up, it was the mods and the rockers. So I used to go down Southend with my dad. If you step one side of the road, you'd watch them then take on the police. And then reggae came along, and scarp music, and then rap music came. So it's always evolving. Our youth always evolve, and they talk about their situation in their time. Drill music's the same.
Oh, I can't stand that kids these days vibe.
Oh, and it's awful.
Because I was a millennial becoming an adult, then a professional, then economically relevant, which was a lot of fun. But through that coming of age story, it was also the peak of BuzzFeed and whatever nonsense online. And it was just millennials are like this, millennials are like that, millennials are like this. Oh, they're too idealistic, or they're too commercial, or they're like, I'm almost glad to be fading out of like the target economic consumer age range, because it's exhausting and we're not all that different. It's just, anyway, this is a side bit.
But that's the point. It's because what's happening is you're being put into boxes.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's easier to clump people together. It's the same as the housing. Like key worker. What a term. Everyone's a key worker. If you don't do your job, you're not helping society. We're all helping society in whatever our job is, whether it's to grow society, the wealth of society, to help the social infrastructure of society.
Yeah.
So, but it was, we're going to term it a key worker because they can't afford the whole of the market, but they can afford this amount of the market. Well, actually, where does that come from? Because, again, jobs themselves, and I use this, and this is why we came up with the community rent model. There should be no poor doors or gated communities. What there should be is a range of offers that fit you in your circumstance, and they move with you in your circumstance. I call it flexi tenure. And what that basically means is the home becomes your launch pad for your aspiration of change. Yeah. And I never wanted gentrification, because that's when you're excluding people from change. Yeah, because you're excluding those that can't afford it. And it's all about the property uplift and the land uplift. Actually, it should be about empowering people as well.
Yeah.
And that's, again, what we were doing. So we could show that people improved across the whole borough. From the Social Progress Index, we were able to show how people's lives improved to a greater or lesser degree, because no one was going to be the same as anyone else. The same as the rents. And I'll use this scenario. Our politicians today are using housing in the same way they did 100 years ago. And this was a big conversation I used to have within the Labour Party. And I used to say, we've got to stop thinking of housing in the 20th century and think about housing in the 21st century.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way we're going to get the right investment. That's the only way we're going to build the right communities. That's the only way we're going to empower people. And what I meant by that was we still think of housing as in council social housing, market rent and for sale. Well, actually, council housing is a lot more scarce now and the demand on it is so much higher.
Absolutely.
Yeah? And most people do not fit the criteria for council houses, even if they're on the council housing waiting list. They will not get a property because they earn too much, they don't have enough need, and we needed to change that. And that's what I did with the community rent model. So what we did instead was say, well, actually, look at what the data's telling us, and most people earn more than the council rent. So how can we build a framework that allows people to live within that community as a collective whilst having their individual situation assessed?
Yes.
And that's what we did really well. And that's how we managed to build 20% of London's social affordable housing. We were the only London borough at the time to reduce TA year on year for 5 years. And I was honest with people about the waiting list as well. And we reduced the waiting list from 13,500 applications down to 4,300 at the time.
Wow.
Over that 10-year period. So people responded, people understood. And there are some people, frankly, that can afford market rent, so they should pay market rent if they've got that amount of money coming into the household. There's nothing wrong with that. But it was about following people and allowing them to keep what rightfully they've earned to a degree, whilst understanding that what they were also doing, though, was helping the next family that were once in their situation where they needed more help than they did.
To draw a contrast with the pace of planning, getting comfortable with new ideas, it took now 2 London plans for it to become comfortable with the concept of co-living.
Yes.
To become comfortable with some alternative models that we can't really think of, but you can come to us, is how it's phrased at one point as well in the new current draft. And for those following along in your headphones, when you said key worker accommodation, it kind of came with like a bit of a win/eye roll, which I really appreciated because that's come up as something with a similar reaction as we're working through our own consultation at Centro. And I'm glad that there is at least something of a nod. And I think that this is part of the recognition of a key worker accommodation tenure type or even housing typology, that the planning system as it currently delivers is for people who can afford a brand new market accommodation, but also there's an expectation of perfection in so many ways, plus build costs and everything else. It's not just planning usual caveats. And of course, that then needs to subsidize the social rented accommodation, which is the other thing that kind of comes forward. Shared ownership is in there, but the incentives of the cross-subsidy model essentially reward much more expensive market housing to be delivered. And no 3 of those products is actually available in a near term to a middle income person.
Well, yeah, and that's the problem. What it actually promotes is segregation.
Yes.
And it was something that I was very conscious of. And I remember we did one scheme, it was very much at the beginning, a scheme had been put forward. It was 50% of market rent, so target rent, which was still in housing benefit territory, but it was higher than social rent, so higher than council rent itself. 65%, which people would say was key worker, London living rent, whatever you want to call it today. And then you had 80% intermediate rent. So the whole estate, 477 homes, were built on the premise that everyone had the same, that they paid a different rent based on their income ability. Yeah. Now, what was really important for that is the people that were paying a bit more were actually paying a percentage less than the person at the 50.
As a percentage of their
income.
Of their income.
Income outcomes. Right. Yeah. So you're saying to people, look, you aspire and you keep more of it, but you do have to pay a bit more because actually you're still getting a subsidy.
But you don't have to wait until you earn enough that your window frames aren't molded.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
And so what
That's
that actually meant
what
that meant was the investor got a return that was guaranteed to whatever level that was. The resident got something that supported their aspiration. And effectively the developer was able to make a profit based on those two factors.
I love it. And this brings us in a way to opportunities for lessons learned.
Yeah.
And also it brings us back to, frankly, I was surprised that I was the first person to ever say fairy tale.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm the ugly sister or...
we don't have to choose the fairy tale.
Yeah, so I've never... I call it the Brady Bunch, my family. I've got 5 children. 2 I inherited, 3 I had something to do with. And we never use the word step.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it always has a negative connotation. They can call me whatever they like as long as it's not step. And trust me, they do sometimes. But it's this whole thing of saying, well, actually, we value you as a person. We value your situation you find yourself in. And our job is to support you to be aspirational, to do the best you can in the situation you find yourself in.
Yeah.
So if that's a fairy tale, that's fine.
That should be the norm, but it feels like a fairy tale in some context. And I think that the sector is, of course, well-meaning. I think sometimes people are stuck in their ways. Sometimes people are constrained by obligations in statute, regulation, other regimes like building regs, things not necessarily in their control, macro forces.
Okay, but if they had been, I wouldn't have been able to do what I did.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. I'm not using this as like a full stop kind of position. Yeah. I'm teeing up the fact that we deserve to see potential that is available to us to do better.
Yes.
And we owe the people that we are serving as a sector and as a collection of governments at each level to do better.
Agreed.
And you've done better. And so lessons learned to repeat successes wherever we can and to continue trying new things. And it's something that you do talk about in the book, something as obvious as looking at international examples of success and how that model might not even need statutory or regulatory changes to be brought here.
Well, and again, that was quite interesting because we looked at what was happening in other places. Singapore's the sort of flavour of the month at the moment. And I was looking at it going, well, we've already done that. We did that a decade ago, you know. But everyone's saying, oh, Singapore, and it's like, it's great. It works for their community, their social framework. Yeah. Well, actually, what's the UK's piece of that? Same as Barking and Dagenham. The book was written not because I wanted to champion and say to the world, well, look what I did. And, you know, I'm very proud of what I was able to achieve in my role in facilitating change for my community. And politically, it responded, my community. Again, when we think about 2010, we got rid of the BNP. By 2018, I had the highest vote of any political leader in London's history. In 2022, I beat that. It was 79.6% of the people who voted for my administration. So it was clear that people responded to what we were trying to do because it was linking straight into their aspiration. And I'd got the machinery of government at a local level to facilitate that. And again, no changes were needed in the MPPF. No changes were needed in planning. We worked within the system as the system is. So again, you need certainty. So I'm not saying the system's perfect. It's far from perfect.
Oh, we don't need to.
But
we don't need to entertain that idea.
But what we need to say though is there's a lot more you can do within the system.
Yes.
Yeah. Rather than keep chopping and changing it, because actually it makes it really hard for planners.
Yes.
Because it's the new thing. What's the new fad today? What's the new fad tomorrow? So it's about saying, where's that consistency whilst looking at what are the best ideas to build community? And say the book came from me taking Julian Richer, who does the foreword in the book. He came round and he was like, my God, why is this Labour government not listening to you? Why are you not their specialist in this area?
Yeah.
You did it under a Labour administration. You've done it when you had COVID, we had Brexit, we had economic cycles that were not great, and a Conservative government which was a bit disarray. But I still managed it. And it's not saying I'm the big I am, but it is saying, well, actually, take a look. And he then agreed to send it to every local government leader. Again, not to say this is what you need to do. It's to say, look at what was done here and the thinking around it and the framework that actually could help your thinking in your communities for your aspiration.
Yeah. In a way, almost just imagining that something better is
achievable
now in our constraints.
Well, it is. Again, I hate to say this, but when we had the largest house building program in the country's history, we'd just come out of losing our empire, or in the process of losing our empire, the First World War, and a lot of deprivation and slums. And the Becontree estate, where I live, was built. 27,000 homes, the largest council estate ever built in the country's history. The Homes for Heroes, replicated across Greater London and up and down the country. I was in Manchester the other week, and it's like being in Dagenham because it was those houses.
Yep.
Anyway, we did it then. We borrowed the money, we took bonds, and we built communities. All that social infrastructure, the parks, the shops, the leisure facilities, all of it was built within that framework, knowing that it was BTR, knowing it would take 75 years to pay it back.
Yeah.
But look what it did for the country's wealth and growth. It was incredible. It facilitated Ford's, the largest employer, around 50,000 people in its heyday, 100,000 supply chain, all the other industries that we had along the estuary was linked to what was going on through that housing. Now, the times have changed and we need to think about it. But look what we did as a society, politically we did, was we changed the Homes for Heroes. We then called it council housing, and now it's called social housing, which is a derogatory term, came up with in the 80s to say you're not good enough to buy your own home because you're on the social.
It's parental.
Yes, it's parental. It's saying we know better than you. We're going to look after you. We're going to do what we need to do because we know best, because we're the parents.
I think the only
relationship.
I think the only worst term is almshouses.
Well, again, they go back a few hundred years. My
and God forbid you build something that goes above a roofline of one. But like, they're beautiful, interesting little artifacts, aren't they?
They are. But again, it was of its time. You got to understand.
It's not for today, no.
It's not for today because the world is a very different place. We didn't have the population we had today. If you look, the most green properties now are built on top of each other.
Yep.
Victorian mansion blocks, I think, are fantastic. You'll see a lot of that in Barking and Dagenham. You'd have to come and do the tour. I do the inclusive growth tour where I take people around 2.5 hours and I show you how you connect it all together, how you connect the housing with the green spaces, with the education, with the community. And again, if we're looking at new towns, we've got to be thinking this way for new towns. We've done a lot of here's the bricks and mortar, but we've done very little here's the hearts and minds.
We'll be right back. At Centro, our tailored approach turns potential into planning permission for major development projects nationwide. Every project is unique, and our analytical and persuasive approach delivers the best possible results for our clients. Our team's diverse insights are essential to creative problem solving, and together, we're proud to plan for a sustainable future. Get in touch if we can help. Find us on LinkedIn and online at centroplan.co.uk. The impression that I got from the book and that I'm getting from the conversation centers so much around leadership. And look, I'm not tooting your horn. I'm just saying in general, another way that I thought about it on the same point is that the book is a case study of how to do the absolute best possible in a system that has been constructed to be indifferent. Not with the intention of it being indifferent, but in practice, it is an indifferent planning system.
Yeah.
Well, we might hit our targets if we receive applications that we love enough. And this is a public benefit, but I would have really liked to see it done differently. So notwithstanding it, you're not going to get permission. Or case by case, officer by officer, hey, you know what? I see what you're trying to do here. Let's try to work it this way. And then you get to a permission in half the time with half the grief.
Yes.
And that building is not going to be any less appreciated than the building that was,
But that's the difference between having a master vision and just a master plan.
And Peter Murray talks about this quite a lot. Vision and leadership as well.
Yeah.
And he has nothing but nice things to say about you.
I like good old Peter. He's a good chap. Young man. Young man.
And we wish him the best in his mayoral candidacy.
Yes, yeah. He's asked me about a few bits and pieces and I've given him some of my thoughts because I'm not in politics now. But again, if he's able to bring this out in the conversation, it can only be a good thing for London.
He also thinks he should stand for Parliament.
I tried that and then some people were very nasty about me. And I just thought, I'm not sure about that again. But look, I think all of us should be given opportunities to improve society for the better.
Yes.
Whether that be in the public or the private sector or the voluntary sector for that matter. I think that we need to start holding our policies to account. So I've been talking about a think tank that's different to a standard everyday And funny enough, called Building Communities. Strange that, isn't it? So the idea of the think tank would be that we actually hold policy to account and we build the conversations. Because if you look at what's happening in our communities, politics can really get in the way of progress when it comes to development. Again, case in point, what I did in B&D, the support I give in Harlow, where I've done some work for Harlow recently. Yeah. I'm going into Newham now as a mayoral advisor for regeneration and housing community stuff to give them strategic advice and that. So I'm hoping that's another success. There's some stuff up north I'm looking at as well. But it's really about how can we make the system work for the society we want to see.
Marry me.
Yeah, because at the moment, I would, by the way, but I've been happily married for 19 years. My wife would tell me off.
Flattered.
But we're too much about the master plan. So the outcome of an idea, rather than saying, well, actually, does that idea fit in the master vision? There were some people I would speak to and go, look, what you want to do is great, but it won't work here because it's not part of the vision we have for this people purpose in place. But good luck with that, and let's make it easier on everyone. And you don't have to burn bridges, you don't have to be nasty, you can be complimentary and say, well, actually, it won't work here, but I know the guys down the road here are thinking about something like this. That could be interesting for you. Go and have a chat with them. And I used to do that all the time. Now, leadership we all have. What I always used to say was, a leader is the person who's the best facilitator for change in their community. Not a political leader has soft power. Yeah. So we don't run an entity, an organisation. We lead that entity, organisation. So you need officers, head of paid service if you take local government. You need to have the right officers who understand the master vision that the leadership are putting forward.
Yes.
And then, but that master vision isn't from some political doctrine. It's actually from the conversations from the community about their aspiration of where they see themselves in that 3 Ps, people, purpose and place. Once you've got that, what you then do is you're breaking down the red lines. You're now saying that scheme over there is just as important as the scheme over here, or what's being built there for the community to interact with is just as important, because this community will want to use that facility. And I'll give you 2 pieces of work in the town centre. There's one, and it's right to name check a developer, isn't it?
You do you. I mean...
Fine. I'm being nice because I'm asking, but normally I wouldn't care. So Western Homes, Bob Weston, I've known him for many, many years. He saw what we was doing in Barking and Dagenham, and he's been party to that. And he developed his own equivalent to the community rent model. So he's got 6 properties, of course, you would have those. He's got BTR properties. He's got 8% in perpetuity of ownership, and then he's got 100% market rent. Yeah, but it's all together, as in it's all on the same estate. You haven't got gated here and gated there. You haven't got the pour doors where you're going through the bins. What you've got is you've got good quality homes for people in different income brackets. Yeah. It turned out to be one of his best selling estates in his business, right? Across the road, though, and one of the things he was good enough to do, was he understood the side of arts and culture, the hearts and minds. And he said the communal area that he had, this place where the residents who live there can hire it out, you could have local artists that are recognised by the council, up to 10 of them a year could have a week's display of their artwork. So it becomes a gallery for the wider community. So now what you're doing is you're taking away the red line. You're now saying to someone who lives in Dagenham like me, well, actually, this local artist is going to present their work here. Come and see this gallery. Now, the development next door is Eco World, Malaysian international funding. There, they have the Women's Museum, the first women's museum of its kind in the country, which was for all women, celebrating all women because of equality. And it's not about going to look at old artefacts. It's of saying, how do we empower women to feel as equal as men in a society that is very not the case?
Yes.
And if you know the history again of Barking and Dagenham, you'll know we're strong on women's rights going back many years.
Some might say the birthplace of the feminist movement.
I would say that, but actually there was nowhere recognising that. So part of the 106 there is to have this women's museum that is a space about where men and women can come and understand what empowerment looks like through that lens. But if you look at those two different sites, in traditional sense, they just have red lines around them, gated communities, no interaction.
Yeah.
By putting and having the gallery in one and the women's museum in the other, you're now encouraging, and more importantly, you're welcoming people from the existing estates to come and be part of that change.
Yeah.
Yeah? Because communities don't see red lines, they don't see wards, and they don't see maps, master plans. They just don't. What they see is doorsteps, they see streets, and they see neighbourhoods.
Yes.
And it's how you bring that together. Yeah. And that's why you must have a master vision. And I feel sorry for lots of developers because they get blamed for a lot of things, which actually, if the council had done the master vision in the first place, a lot of these issues would be worked through before they go anywhere near a master plan.
And it's a frustrating part of planning at the moment. Listeners of the pod will know my position on it, that developers are expected to wash their own face on things that aren't their face.
Yes.
But it's good to contribute to infrastructure. It's good to be mindful of how some of the floor space might be loss making because you're going to put in a women's museum. But when the development of homes is considered a harm that then needs to be mitigated by making sure that there's no extra pressure on an NHS surgery, no extra pressure on the fire brigade. Yes, make the contributions, but my God, please let me pay more in taxes to the NHS so that they can fund and locate surgeries in the right way based on their needs.
But again, this is, going into a bigger area here. There needs to be a realignment of what local government is expected to do, regional government and national government, when it comes to infrastructure. And then once that's realigned, then looking at saying to people, okay, you want to build this, we get that, here's your contribution to that realignment.
Yes.
And it can be done. It can be done very easily. At the moment, it's being done without any data. It's being done based on ideology. So what you then get is you get the NHS that says we need X, and they probably do. But actually, we've lost 4, some would say 3, but 4 hospitals in Borough and Dagenham in my lifetime.
Wow.
We've got Queen's in Havering, and that with a sister St George's, which is a smaller facility, operates 3 London boroughs, which is nearly 1 million people.
Wow.
And then we wonder why we've got a problem with that acute care, right?
Yeah.
We've got half the doctors that we need in Borough and Dagenham. I don't think that's changed since I've left. Actually, why can't, and again, it's something we were looking at, why can't we use the funds that we're given to use on apprenticeships and say to 50 local residents, young people, listen, you're interested in medicine, you're interested in doing this stuff, we will fund you. Because actually on the proviso that you will work for a period of time in your local community at supporting that local advancement. So they're getting the ability to become qualified in something that we know we need. Social workers can be done the same way, therapists.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can look at this through a lens of it's their problem or it's our problem. And I was always about it's our problem. We collectively need to come up with a solution.
I like the idea of giving authorities more flexibility on how they can spend SIL and how the infrastructure, the I and CIL, is defined because human capital and talent is a resource.
Yeah.
And in terms of a labor pool for a specific sector like healthcare, a public facing sector,
Yeah.
that is infrastructure as much as the
Of course it is.
hospital.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
People are infrastructure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
They are.
Yeah, I love that.
Because if they don't do their job, you can't have the services. And if you can't have the services, none of us live longer. In fact, we have a much more harsh situation that we're going to face on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So it's about saying, right, what do we need to do to build growth that's inclusive, not exclusive? London has an issue. We are still building for exclusive London. And what's made London the greatest city in the world is its inclusion. It's its ability for anyone from this great globe to be able to come here and make it home.
Hello.
Yes. Welcome.
I love it.
It's what puts the great in Great Britain as far as I'm concerned. The problem is, though, we've got to a stage now where we've forgotten that as a city. And we have a situation, I call it the octopus. It's not the same as the donut in Paris, but it is starting to happen now, where the octopus is you live outside of the centre in clusters. So at the moment, if you take our transport network, we operate that in that silo working. You've got to come all the way into the centre to then go back out again.
Yeah.
Now that worked 100 years ago when we hadn't built the Greater London area, but we've now built the Greater London area and it's getting more dense.
Yeah.
And at some point we'll go out to probably the M25 or just beyond. Yeah. It will happen. We're looking at new towns now. Ebbsfleet is there. You're looking at in Enfield and looking at. So when you look at this, it's about saying, right, what are we trying to achieve? How do we get ecosystems that work for people, purpose in place locally, which then as nodes connect to what the wider thinking is for the city and in the country?
To carry on the donut versus octopus example, it's really well positioned to be a multipolar city.
Yeah.
And you see this in the city with Canary Wharf, and then you see this in the way that opportunity areas are designated. And then as though they should have been there the whole time, they rise from the ground in a decade. And I think we can be more confident in London's ability to deliver for itself. And it doesn't always have to be in the areas where we've drawn circles on the map. But for connectivity, a multipolar transport network. Yeah. And this is why council governments love the overground. It is very well used. It is growing ridership. And it is so well appreciated by people who need to get to Riverside but don't want to go to Fenchurch Street.
Yeah.
And I think all of that is really important.
But if you're those communities that are in places like Barking and Dagenham, they can't get on those trains because they're already full.
Yes.
Yeah. And these are the people that are facilitating those jobs that we need to happen for the city to actually operate at a lower level.
Exactly. And that's why it's important. It's not because the map looks cooler. It's not because the skyline has all of these clusters. It's because the people who need to live and work and they put the work in. Why are they coming into somebody else's toy museum town? You know what I mean? Yeah,
I do. So in COVID, Barking was the busiest station in the country. Because it was 0-hour contracts, people needed to get paid. They had to go to work.
Yeah.
And these were the low-end jobs. But they were hard workers and they had to do what they had to do. But look at it another way. We're looking at Ebbsfleet. Ebbsfleet can build 25,000 homes. We look at Purfleet. Purfleet can build another 20,000 homes. Mm-hmm. Planning's already sorting a lot of these areas. Look at Riverside. Riverside is another 20,000 homes.
I loved that section 73 where they doubled the capacity.
That's it.
Because I thought, why not? But
that's the whole
brilliant
point. That is the whole point, right? And I've been pushing for it before I left. That was what I was pushing for, right? It's ridiculous we weren't doing it.
We did a post about it. I was just absolutely popping off. Yeah.
So it was great that it's happened. But take those 3 areas alone, okay? That is, in effect, 65, 70,000 homes. 6 new towns, maybe 7 new towns. What do we need to do to facilitate that? Well, we need the transport infrastructure. Okay. What goes through all those areas? Oh, I don't know. Crossrail. No, it doesn't. Because actually they didn't deem it important enough to do that. But these are your growth areas. But I tell you what does go through. Eurostar. So the rail line is already there. Yeah. You need a couple of junctions because every 40 minutes there's one going to France or wherever it's off to, Belgium, wherever. But actually, why couldn't you have HS1 domestic? Why couldn't you have Fleet, Purfleet, Barking, Stratford International, King's Cross?
Listeners, I'm smiling because Ebbsfleet, Folkestone and Stratford were all built for that to be the case. You've got the Javelin.
Yes.
Which is like an expensive way to get to Margate on the weekend.
Yes.
Fine. But
no, but as a simple domestic line.
As a regular service.
As a regular service, Monday to Friday, you've just put the land value up. You've just made it connectable. 25 minutes you're in King's Cross from Ebbsfleet. Okay, or 30 minutes. Yeah. All right. From Barking, which is, by the way, it's 20 metres below Barking Station. Yeah, you just put in an extra platform 20 metres down and it's just made that connectable. 15 minutes, you're in King's Cross. So when you look at it in that respect, we're looking at big pieces of work. DLR. I think it's great DLR's going to Thamesmead. but it's a 40 or 50-year-old piece of machinery that we're tapping onto once again. You've got the Elizabeth line at Abbey Wood. Mm-hmm. You're going to have Ebbsfleet that could be a connector. Yeah. You've got the riverboat service at Barking Riverside, but we're going to spend £1 billion, give or take, on a 40-year-old piece of machinery. And that's not having a go, because we do need the transport infrastructure. Yeah. But I think we could be more creative about it.
Yes, exactly. I'm definitely not hearing, we don't need another Crossrail. We need 10 more Crossrails. And there are lower cost, sensible solutions based on infrastructure we have for targeted interventions.
Absolutely.
To unlock
65,000 homes.
Okay. Yeah.
That's pretty decent, isn't it? And you've already got the infrastructure to facilitate most of that.
Yeah.
That's not saying everyone's going to use the train. A lot of people work from home. But again, it's why it's important that we have the 15-minute neighbourhoods. We have this ability for people to socialise, connect, operate within that 15-minute radius. Yeah. At the same time, the nodal system then works, because at the moment, London is not nodal. Yeah. It is that octopus. We're coming all the way in, boom, all the way out. And actually what we're doing is we're blighting in between.
In terms of housing cost and access to opportunity, it's still unipolar. Yeah. Economically, in terms of business interest, it's multipolar.
Yeah.
In terms of housing choice for wealthy people, it is multipolar.
Yeah. Unless we start addressing the thinking of where we want this great city to go, like it has done. Again, if you think about the slums of the old East End, that's why the Greater London Authority was built, in effect. Barking and Dagenham was built. It was built to clear those slums. It was built to make that change. If you look at Canary Wharf, again, I weren't against the money that went in there, but actually the people it displaced. And even today, my in-laws live not too far away, but they were on the island originally and got moved away because it weren't for them. Look at the Olympic Park. People go, what great success. Well, how much of that has got housing for people on lower incomes?
Yeah.
Yeah, it hasn't. It's like a spaceship that's landed, and if you live on the Carpenter's estate next door, you've got all these haves, and you're still part of the have-not brigade. It's got its own postcode. How to tell people they're not important when they give it their own postcode. That's my little bugbear, but it's about inclusive growth. Yeah, King's Cross, another one. If you live on Summertown, actually your social progress index hasn't improved since King's Cross was built. That is fantastic. Regeneration. All of those are fantastic regeneration, but they're not inclusive growth. They're not building communities. They are bricks and mortar, but they're not the hearts and minds.
It draws back to that contrast between being an architect of a community and being an architect.
Absolutely.
And I do think it is something that planning misses, is that way that we talk about placemaking as though that's ours to do.
Yeah, it's so annoying. It's so condescending.
The allegory that I picture for what we actually do is we think that we are the coral reef, that we create the coral reef, but we don't. We can create the concrete domes with holes cut in them that are then dropped into the water that then allow a coral reef to have a place to grow.
Yep.
There's sometimes, I think, a humility lacking in everything from public realm design to changes of use to da-da-da-da-da. Like, thank God for Class E, frankly, is another way to put it.
Yeah.
But we need to have a humility that people make places their own.
Well, everyone does. Yeah. And that's
absolutely
that is the problem. As I said, everyone is an architect of their community. They are part of that community. And trust me, I get the double meaning, don't worry. But I think there is a problem at the moment, and certainly as it's playing out politically in this country, where you have what I call the educated class.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, and there's nothing wrong with being educated.
Guilty.
Trust me. It's good, right?
Yeah.
But with that educated class comes an assumption that the socially educated, people like myself, are not equal.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, we both bring something that is needed if we are to build communities.
100%.
So whilst I'm dyslexic from Dagenham, didn't get any real qualifications because the education was set for me to work in a factory or a warehouse or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to understand that arts and culture, connection, community was my building blocks of education. And from that, I took a community that was hurting, that had been absolutely demoralised, lost all its purpose, gave them the ability to articulate that and deliver a change that made it the most inclusive community under the ONS at the time that said that was the case, despite still having lots of challenges. And I would say if we are really serious about sorting out where we want growth to happen and how it needs to happen, we both need the educated class, formally educated class, and those that are socially educated working in the same vein of trying to build communities.
It's really beautifully said.
Thank you. That was Dagenham simple and Dagenham direct. But look, it's been a real pleasure, Aaron, to be here today. The book I'm very proud of. I have to say, there's 700 copies that have already gone out. There's only 300 left. There won't be a second one, I can assure you. But it is written in a way that says, again, everyone should have a voice in this change. Everyone, no matter their socially educated or their formal education, allows them to understand what they wish the system was. And what's so great about the framework is it isn't telling people this is what they should do. It's giving them the ability to think about how outcomes will matter for people with purpose in place.
It's a terrific book, and I look forward to reading it in the detail that it genuinely deserves. And I encourage everybody to pick up a copy. As I'm Graham Norton over here. Yeah. But Building Communities One Brick and One Heart at a Time by Darren Rodwell. Please pick up a copy. Darren, it's a book with a tremendous success story and how people in our sectors and in our communities can find success as they choose to define it. So it's terrific that way.
Exactly that. Everything should be about what people want to see themselves in the future. Thank you again.
Darren, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Make Planning Make Sense. Please do give the show a follow, and please share the show to keep the conversation going and the community growing. Find us on Instagram at mpmspodcast or write to us at podcast@centroplan.co.uk. Make Planning Make Sense is presented by Centro Planning Consultancy and recorded in beautiful London, England. Its executive producer is me, Aaron Zimmerman. Graphic design by our colleague Mariam Malaxi. Music by Joseph McDade. From all of us here at Centro, thanks again for listening.